What's up, fight fan? Welcome back to the channel. Paddy Pimblett just went off on Arman Tsarukyan, accusing him of copying his entire social media playbook, and whether you love Paddy or can't stand him. This call-out is kind of hilarious. We're also diving into the Nick Diaz situation that has everyone worried, Dana White shutting down fight rumors left and right, and why some of the UFC's biggest names want nothing to do with the White House card. Paddy Pimblett appeared on Full Send MMA recently, and the host brought up Arman Tsarukyan, who's been absolutely everywhere the last few weeks. Podcasts, live streams, interviews, and he's been talking trash about Paddy non-stop while the internet eats it up. People are calling it a generational social media run. Arman's follower count is blown up, engagement is through the roof, and suddenly everyone's an Arman fan. Paddy sees it differently and thinks Arman is just ripping off his whole strategy. Here's what he said, quoting directly, "He's trying to copy me, isn't he? Trying to be me on social media, going around eating burgers and pizza? Stick to your caviar, lad. You know what I mean? You eat caviar, you posh. Stick to eating that." Paddy's whole brand has been built on being this working-class Liverpool guy who loves his junk food and talks trash with zero filter. And that's been his thing for years. Arman coming from money, eating fancy food, then suddenly showing up on podcasts eating burgers and roasting Paddy. You can see why Paddy would call that out. Whether it's actually copying or just Arman playing the game is up for debate, but Paddy clearly thinks he's being imitated. Arman's been calling him pretentious according to Paddy, saying he needs to be brought back down to earth, claiming Daddy's money made him think everything should be handed to him on a silver platter. The irony there is pretty thick considering Arman actually comes from wealth. But that's the trash talk game, where logic goes out the window when you're trying to build a fight. Before we keep going, do me a favor and hit that like button because it actually helps the channel more than you'd think. And it takes half a second. Nick Diaz finally broke his silence after disappearing for over a year, and what he said has people genuinely concerned. Multiple sources had reported that Nick was in rehab, trying to get his life together after years of struggles, and now he's confirming he was locked up somewhere. But he's pointing fingers at the people who put him there. Nick posted a long message on Instagram that reads like, "Someone who's been through hell," writing, "To everyone talking about my life and how they want to control me, you never will again. I was locked up for over a year, and the ones I thought closest to me kept me there for their own motives. An older man who's been acting as a spokesman for the family got called out, with Nick saying everything that guy says is BS, and he's done listening to someone trying to hold him down with negativity. YouTubers, he claims, are scammers starting drama for views also got targeted, and then it got really personal." Nick said his wife Kayla is the only one who's had his back without trying to benefit from it, and he thanked a guy named Martin Sano for being real since day one. But here's where it gets messy, because Nick addressed his brother Nate directly, writing, "For my brother Nate, I don't know what his issue is, but you need to cut out the talkers in your group to keep it real. They're embarrassing to be around." The Diaz brothers have been inseparable their entire careers, and watching Nick call out Nate publicly like this is sad to see. We don't know the full story, and family stuff is complicated, especially when mental health and potential substance abuse issues are involved. Now, hopefully they can work this out privately, but right now it sounds like there's a real rift between them. Dana White sat down with TMZ Sports before UFC 324, and they asked him about the White House card that everyone's been speculating about. Matchmaking meetings are happening starting Monday, according to Dana. And by the second week of February, the card should be completely built. That doesn't mean we'll get official announcements right away since contracts need to be signed, but it sounds like things are moving forward. Conor McGregor versus Jorge Masvidal is one fight that's been making the rounds on social media, with Ali Abdelaziz and Masvidal teasing it, fans talking about it, and it seemed like it could actually happen. Dana shut that down immediately, and when TMZ asked him about it, he said, "I have nothing MMA in my algorithm on Instagram. I don't listen to any of the goofy stuff." Then they asked if McGregor versus Masvidal is goofy, and Dana just said, "That's goofy. Yeah, so that's dead in the water," according to Dana. Michael Chandler responded on Twitter with some sarcasm, writing, "I cannot confirm nor deny if I landed on the moon last week," which is pretty funny. Michael Bisping actually came out in favor of the Masvidal fight, saying it makes perfect sense because the UFC wants Conor to win, Masvidal is entertaining, and they'd stand and bang, but if Dana's calling it goofy, it's probably not happening. Ali Abdelaziz is now pushing for Justin Gaethje versus Conor McGregor at the White House card, and he told Submission Radio he wants to see it on June 14th for America's 250th birthday. Ali said, "Bring an Irish drunk guy to the White House, and make sure he doesn't have anything on him and fight Justin." Conor's been running from Justin all his life, and this is surprisingly complimentary coming from Ali, who also said, "I might not like Conor, but at one point he was a really good fighter, and I can't take that away from him. But there are levels to this." And now, Justin Gaethje is on a different level. Here's the thing though, it's 2026 and Conor hasn't fought in years. The idea of him cutting back down to 155 pounds seems almost impossible at this point. And would the fight be entertaining? Absolutely. But is it realistic? Probably not. Quick updates on some other fights. Starting with Jailton Almeida stepping up to fight Rizvan Kuniev on February 7th in Vegas, replacing Ryan Spann. Almeida is coming off a split decision loss to Alexander Volkov and is currently ranked number 6 at heavyweight, while Kuniev lost his UFC debut by split decision to Chris Blades, so this is a huge opportunity for him in just his second UFC fight. Kayla Harrison had to pull out of her fight with Amanda Nunes at UFC 324 after emergency neck surgery, and her manager Ali Abdelaziz told Submission Radio that Kayla's been dealing with this issue for 3 years, going back to her PFL days. She's had tingling in her arm, couldn't lift it, tried injections and anti-inflammatories, and nothing worked, so the UFC flew her to New York, and the doctor said she needed immediate surgery because the disc was pushing on her spinal cord and could have paralyzed her. The good news is the surgery worked, with Ali saying immediately after the procedure, all the pain was gone. That's scary stuff, but at least she's recovering now. Amanda Nunes gave a statement in Portuguese saying she was sad because her training camp was perfect and she was ready physically, mentally, and spiritually. And now they're just waiting to see what the UFC does next. Paddy Pimblett ran into Gene Silva at the Performance Institute, and things got weird because there's video of Paddy literally barking at him, like actually barking. Silva said something about Carlos Paredes meeting Paddy and then starting to smoke and party, and Paddy just started barking in response, which is the kind of ridiculous content that makes Paddy such a polarizing figure, where you either think it's hilarious or completely obnoxious. Dana White and Jake Paul were also spotted together at a football game, sitting near Donald Trump, and considering how much those two have gone at each other on social media, seeing them forced to have a civil conversation in public was pretty entertaining. No word on what they talked about, but the optics alone were worth noting. Tom Aspinall has been getting roasted online ever since his no-contest fight with Sergey Pavlovich in October, and if you remember, Aspinall took 2 brutal eye pokes and couldn't continue. Even Dana White stopped short of saying there was no question Aspinall couldn't keep fighting, which felt like a dig. And for a guy who was getting praised constantly before that fight, the backlash was brutal. Aspinall's teammate Modus Bukauskas spoke with MMA Fighting and went off defending him, saying, "When you see that stuff online, I just felt so bad for Tom. He's been a consummate company man. He took a fight on 2 weeks' notice against Sergey Pavlovich. He's been waiting on the sidelines for John Jones. He's been doing everything for this company, and he's put on some amazing performances." Bukauskas also talked about getting eye-poked himself, saying his vision was blurred for a whole year one time, and he said people calling Aspinall soft have probably never been poked that deep in the eye. Once Aspinall's doctors released information about how serious the damage was and that he needed surgery, a lot of the critics went quiet. But Bukauskas thinks Tom is going to use this as motivation when he comes back. And based on what Aspinall's been saying about Pavlovich since then, the rematch is going to have some serious bad blood. Rose Namajunas is fighting Natalia Silva this Saturday at UFC 324. And according to Rose, she's been told a title shot is waiting if she wins. The fight was originally supposed to be against Alexa Grasso, but Grasso had to pull out and Silva stepped in. And Silva is ranked number 2. So if she wins, she's obviously getting a title shot. But Rose is apparently being told the same thing, even though she's only 1 win removed from losing to Erin Blanchfield. Ariel Helwani asked Rose how she'd feel about fighting Valentina Shevchenko for the belt. And Rose said she'd want to have a conversation with Valentina first because she's someone Rose has looked up to. She called Valentina her favorite female fighter and said it would be weird trying to beat someone she never wants to see lose. And Rose said they'll cross that bridge when they get there, but the emotions would definitely be conflicting. Now let's talk about the White House card drama, because despite how massive this event is supposed to be, a bunch of UFC fighters have said they're not interested in competing on it. Brendan Royval said he wants to fight in front of real fans, not a bunch of politicians, and that the whole thing gives him Hunger Games vibes. Sean Strickland said he wants fans more included instead of the arena being filled with random politicians, and even Paddy Pimblett said he wouldn't be interested because the attendance would be so limited he probably couldn't bring his own family. Dana responded to the criticism during a Bloomberg interview saying, "I don't know how it would be too political other than it's at the White House. If you look back throughout history, George Bush was a big baseball fan, Obama was an NBA fan, and Trump is a UFC fan. I don't think that any of those guys being fans made any sport too political." That's a fair point, but the fighters' concerns aren't really about Trump being a fan. They're about the event itself being exclusive and political by nature when it's held at the actual White House. The atmosphere is going to be completely different than a normal UFC event, and whether that's good or bad depends depends on what you value as a fighter, but it's definitely not a typical fight night. So what do you think? Is Arman Tsarukyan actually copying Paddy Pimblett's playbook? Or is Paddy just salty that someone's beating him at his own game? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you made it this far, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss tomorrow's video. We'll see you then. We'll see.